Alright, I am back with another video, and today we are doing a build request. I was asked to attempt to mix the Druid's Wildshape ability with the Enlarge ability that becomes innately with being a Duergar. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like a fun combo, but I mean, how much is it actually going to do? And before patch 5, I would have said not much. However, there's been a few key changes that were added to Wildshape with patch 5 that have changed this build dramatically, and this is no exaggeration, one of the strongest builds I've made, arguably good enough to do Lone Wolf on Tactician, in my opinion. You will see what I mean once we get into it, but holy crap, this thing shreds, and you'll see what I mean. But let's get into the build. First up, I'm going to be starting off as a fighter. This is going to give us a couple of things. Number 1 is Constitution saving throw proficiency, and number 2 is a fighting style, namely the defense fighting style. This is going to give us a +1 bonus to armor class while wearing armor. However, this does carry over into Wildshape as long as you are wearing armor before you Wildshape. So this means our Wildshape form is just going to get a +1 to their armor class, which is pretty good. Now next up is our stats, and these are going to look a little bit weird, but hear me out. Strength and Dexterity are both at 8. Now even though we don't exactly need these in a Wildshape build, because because when we're Wildshaped we take on the physical stats of the animal we've Wildshaped into, I am going to be using equipment to bump up these two stats anyway, so that this build can be effective even when you're not Wildshaped, because the kind of idea I had for this build is because since we can put more into our Intelligence, Wisdom and Charisma, just due to the nature of Wildshape builds, we can actually make this build the face of the party, as well as a really powerful combatant. And because we can Wildshape, and we're going to have Druid stuff, like Speak with Animals and the like, you're going to pretty much get all of the good dialogue stuff. So this is going to be a party face, so this is absolutely perfect if you wanted to go play through a campaign with this being the main character, but also you're going to have a ton of high stats across the board, which is awesome. So, as I said, Strength and Dex at 8, Constitution is at 12, this is the only stat that we're not really going to be bumping up through any sort of form of equipment, but again, since we're going to be Wild-shaped most of the time, this is actually less important, but one of the reasons we went fighter was to get that con save proficiency, just so this isn't abysmal. You can grab the Amulet of Greater Constitution if you want to bump this up anyway in Act 3, however, I don't think it's 100% necessary, but if you wanted to play around with these stats, maybe you don't care about any of these so much, you can put some more points into con, but it's entirely up to you. Intelligence at 14, just because it kind of rounded out that way, and Wisdom and Charisma at 16. We are going to be using Wisdom, but also Charisma is nice for a party face, so I decided to have that at 16 as well. And as for our proficiencies, I've gone with I believe this is the Guild Artisan background, just because I wanted Persuasion proficiency. Again, if we are a face, this works, and Noble didn't exactly feel right to me. So I can see this character as an actual character, maybe even living in the Druid's Grove from Act 1 of the game, and is sort of a, artisan, they craft things, they build various things, perhaps they, make the armor or the weapons that the Druids use. So I feel like this character is quite, even though they are like a Duergar, perhaps they actually left the Underdark, sought comfort in nature, and was accepted into the Druid's Grove and became a Druid. They kind of escaped their, nasty fate. So I feel like a Guild Artisan can be justified here, which is quite nice. Maybe they went from being, an Armor Master for the Duergar to a, Quartermaster for the Druids. Oh, that's actually kind of cool. Yeah, you know what, that's what this character is. That's kind of the lore justification for it. But anyways, we get Persuasion and Insight from this, which is nice for a party face, as well as Perception and Intimidation, which is, again, quite nice. So I feel like this build overall rounds out pretty nicely. Right, at level 2, we're going to be jumping straight over to Moon Druid, and we're going to be staying there. You know how Moon Druids work at this point, if you've been on the channel. Although I think this is the first time I've straight up built I've just noticed the armor is glitching out on the bottom. That's weird. Let's ignore that. But as you know, when you build a Moon Druid, you kind of have to go Moon Druid at least to a level 11, with a 1-level dip in something like Fighter to be able to get the most out of it. So we are going to be doing that here, but however, you will see that it is totally worth it. And like I say, I am building this character so that if for some reason you can't wild shape or you don't want to in a particular situation, the build does have some efficacy outside of that. So let's get into it. First up, we are going to be playing a Druid, like I said, and our cantrips are going to be Guidance and Shillelagh. Shillelagh, because this is going to allow us to use our Wisdom modifier for the attack and damage rolls of our, weapon, and also it increases the amount of damage it does as a base. Now, technically, we're going to have more strength, than Wisdom, when we kind of get into the equipment. However, getting that extra damage die feels worth it in my opinion. But if you don't, and Shillelagh is going to enable some other equipment that we're going to be able to use later. However, if you don't care so much about that, just ditch this and go for something else, maybe like Thorn Whip or Resistance. But I'm going to be taking it here, and you'll see why in a moment. And we're also going to be grabbing Guidance. Again, if we are a party face and we're not going to be casting Friends, we might as well cast Guidance. This is going to make all of our ability checks even better. And finally, the spells. This one is going to be fairly simple. Speak with Animals, Long Strider, Enhanced Sleep, and we'll go with Goodberry just to guarantee camp supplies. These are just a standard Druid utility kit. Again, we're going to be spending most of our time in Wildshape, so we just want to grab utility spells that will work with Wildshape. These two do, and while you technically don't need Speak with Animals, if you're Wildshaped, you can just Speak with Animals anyway. You might not want to be spending your Wildshape charges just to talk to animals, so we'll just go with Speak with Animals for now, just so we have that. And Goodberry, like I said, is just to guarantee camp supplies and do a little bit of extra healing. Next up at Druid level 2, we are going to be picking our subclass, and of course, we are going with Circle of the Moon. This is going to buff up our wild shapes, allowing us to heal by expending our spell slots, gives us more wild shape forms overall, including a bear, which is awesome. And, you know, it's going to give us some synergy with equipment that we're going to be getting later. So overall, we absolutely want this, 100%. And the best part is if we get to Circle of the Moon at level 3, our racial feature, Enlarge, which is what we're here for, is also acquired at this level. So this strategy comes online right away. And you'll notice something about this version of Enlarge. It doesn't require concentration, which I didn't realize until I actually made this build in game. This increases the power of this build tenfold. Not needing concentration on this is going to be awesome, but let's actually read what Enlarge does. You gain advantage on ability checks and saving throws using strength, and your weapon attacks deal an extra 1d4 damage. Now, this isn't, since we're not technically using weapon attacks, this might not work out exactly the way you want to, but getting that advantage on ability checks and saving throws related to strength is going to be helping us out in a moment, and you'll see why, but let's keep going. As for our spells, doesn't really matter what you take here. None of these are really going to be helping us out that much, but you could grab Fairy Fire if you wanted to cast that before you Wild Shape, although we are going to have better concentration options. Entangle maybe, I don't know, I would maybe say Charm Person if you are going to be the party face, but it's entirely up to you. Some healing might be good, Create Obscure Water might be good, you never know. At Druid level 3, we are going to be getting level 2 spells as well, and this means we do get to grab some helpful utility options, such as Enhanced Ability to give yourself advantage on ability checks for chosen abilities. Again, as a party face, this does help. And also, I would actually say Spike Growth. If you want to kind of set things up before you Wild Shape, kind of creating some difficult terrain for your opponents, the Spike Growth is a good idea, but you could also grab other things. I would usually suggest Protection from Poison just as a free extra resistance, but as a Druid, we do already get that, so it's not really worth it. Yeah, but I mean, Moonbeam, if you wanted to technically have that extra little bit of, radiant damage while you're Wild Shaped, because you can move it around while you're Wild Shaped, because it doesn't use any, you don't have to recast the spell, you just have to use an action. It's entirely up to you, play around with this, but I kind of just like taking the safe bets for now. Next up at Druid level 4, we are going to be getting our first feat, and I'm so happy about this. We're taking Tavern Brawler, because it actually works with Wildshape now. As of patch 5, as long as we're not playing as a Wildshape that uses a weapon, that being the Myrmidons from Moon Druid level 10, Wildshape will now work on the will now work with Tavern Brawler for using our unarmed attacks. That means we're going to be doing double damage with our, unarmed strikes as a Wildshape, which is huge. I say double damage, but the damage is added twice to the attack and damage rolls. You know what I mean. The bonus is added. Blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean. We're going to be doing a metric shit ton of more damage now. Like, I didn't think they could buff Tavern Brawler even more, and then they just did, which is insane. Now, obviously, our stats are a little bit weird here. Again, we don't really need our strength here, because again we're using a piece of equipment to bump it up, so we could just bump up our constitution. Yes, it's an odd number, but we still do get that bit of extra HP. You see, it goes from 35 to 40, so might as well take that, but we absolutely want Tavern Brawler as early as we can get it. As for our cantrips, take whatever you like here. I'm going to just grab resistance, because it's going to give us that guidance buff, but to saving throws. And as for our prepared spells, we do get an extra one, and after kind of making a case for it, let's grab Moonbeam. At Druid level 5, we are going to be getting level 3 spells, and we also gain Wild Strike. Now we can we can make an extra attack while wild shaped. This is pretty good. Now, as for our prepared spells, I'm going to grab Plant Growth. This is another spell that doesn't require concentration and will quarter the creature's movement speed of those who are walking through it. It will quarter their movement speed, meaning that you can really exert some control on melee-focused enemies that you're fighting, although this will still apply to you unless you use a flying wild shape to fly over it. Maybe don't use this one too much, but I could also make a case for protection from energy. Again, if you're not using your concentration for something else, you could use this to give yourself resistance to an element that your enemy is using before you wild shape, and then keep that resistance while wild shaped. But yeah, I mean, I don't see that coming up too much, so I'll just go with Plant Growth for now. At Druid level 6, we're going to be getting Primal Strike, I believe this is called. Yes, I'm glad I remembered it. Which allows your wild shape attacks to overcome resistance and immunity to non-magical damage. Pretty good. Basically the similar monk feature, but for wild shape. We also get the Panther and Owlbear wild shapes here. The Owlbear being my personal favourite and the one I would kind of want to use the most with this build. Definitely want to hit this level to get that. Because the Owlbear can rage, and I feel like that works for this build. I don't know why. Maybe because dwarves are associated with barbarians. I don't know. But I like it here. And as for our prepared spells, we do get an extra one. And I'll go with Warden of Vitality since I kind of already made a case for it. At Druid level 7, we are going to be getting level 4 spells, meaning we can grab some really helpful utility options, such as Freedom of Movement. I don't know why I took Warden off there. There we go. Such as Freedom of Movement, which again will work with our Wild Shape as well as something like Longstrider. Combine these two together to be able to make it so difficult terrain cannot slow you down. Now, this is a weird thing. It says difficult terrain cannot slow you down, right? Plant Growth does not specify difficult terrain in its ability. I haven't tested this yet. Let me know if something like Freedom of Movement overcomes Plant Growth, but we'll see. But anyways, basically you're going to want to cast both Freedom of Movement and Longstrider at the start of the day, so you can have those buffs while you're wild-shaped. Next up, at level 8, we are going to get some more prepared spells, and I'm going to recommend Stone Skin. Now, obviously you could get the Summoner spells, and those would work totally fine, but I want to kind of focus on something different, and Stone Skin does work while wild-shaped, as long as you cast it before you wild-shape. We are going to have a better concentration spell as we get towards the end of this, so Stone Skin might not be so useful here, but it may be an option if you want to use it. Maybe perhaps you've used up your usage of this other spell already. And we also did get another feat, and again, with patch 5, another feat now works within Wild Shape, and I do want to grab it. That's the Lucky feat. Yeah, up until patch 5, Lucky did not work while Wild Shaped, but now it does. We gain 3 luck points, which you can use to gain advantage on attack rolls, ability checks, or saving throws, or to make an enemy re-roll their attack rolls. This is just going to give you that extra bit of survivability and damage potential while Wild Shaped, so it's absolutely worth picking up in my opinion. At Druid level 9, we are going to be getting access to our level 5 spells. And at this point, we might as well grab Conjure Elemental, allowing us to get a little bit of extra damage per turn just by the fact that we have another party member. And this could let us summon a Myrmidon as well, because we are going to be getting 6 level spell slots with this character. So pretty good. I would say this is worth it. At level 10, we are going to be getting some extra buffs. We are going to be getting improved Wild Strike, level 11. Meaning that we can now make 2 additional attacks after making an unarmed strike of our Wildshape, meaning that we can now attack 3 times per turn while Wildshaped. That is awesome. We're also going to be getting the Myrmidon transformations, but I wouldn't recommend using those, as again, they don't work with Tavern Brawler. However, we do get the ability to turn into a fucking dinosaur, which is awesome. I absolutely recommend this. This is just cool as hell. Also, you may have noticed a weird cut there. I had to leave for a second, but I did use the opportunity to look into the fact that does Enlarge actually affect unarmed strikes? And yes, it does. The wiki says it does, and in my testing that I quickly checked the combat footage, it 100% does. So yeah, Enlarge does affect unarmed strikes. I was a little bit unsure about that earlier, but I'm certain of it now. Also, we do get a cantrip at this level, and I would say Thorn Whip, because why not? And we do get an extra spell. So let's grab, we could just grab a summoning spell. Let's grab Conjure Woodland Being. And finally, at Druid level 11, it was level 10. Well, whatever. We're total level 12 now, but we're Druid level 11. We do get level 6 spells at this level, and I'm going to recommend Hero's Feast. This is going to give you and your whole party a buff to your HP and makes you and allows you to make wisdom saves with advantage. So I feel like this is going to work out pretty nicely, just as an overall party buff. And that is the build. Next up, let's take a look at the equipment. First up, we have the Shape Changer hat. This is just going to give us an extra wild shape charge per long rest, which is pretty good. And we also have the Armour of Moonbasking to give us 22 temporary hit points while in wild shape, and an extra +2 to our armor class, which is good. We also have the Corvid token, which is going to give us an increased jump distance and featherfall while wild shaped. And the Shapeshifter's Boon Ring, which is going to allow us to gain a +1d4 bonus to all checks while wild shaped. This is just the standard kind of Moon Druid kit that you always kind of want to aim for while playing a, a wild shape build. So I feel like this is going to be pretty good overall, just to kind of as a general equipment thing, but we do have some extra bits here. We also have the Gloves of Dexterity to bump our Dexterity up to 18. This is just here because we didn't want to put those stat points into it, but we still kind of want that stat for when we're outside of wild shape, so these help with that. And the Boots of Speed allow us to dash as a bonus action as much as we like. This is just going to help us with our stubby dwarf legs, but you can kind of sort this out for whatever you like, it doesn't really matter. And we also have the Ring of Free Action just to allow us to ignore the effects of difficult terrain and cannot be paralysed or restrained. This is basically freedom of movement, so feel free to swap this out, but since we get freedom of movement a bit later, and we might want to be able to cast things like Spike Growth earlier on, this helps in the meantime. As for our weapons, we have the Club of Hill Giant Strength. This is just the best club in the game. This is going to set our strength to 19, which means we don't have to invest our points in that. And now we have a really well-rounded stat spread here, with Constitution being the only thing that I'm a bit iffy on. I originally wanted to use the Ironwood Club, because according to the wiki, this club is supposedly, when buffed with Shillelagh, it's supposed to get an extra 1d4 of bludgeoning damage on top of what Shillelagh already gets, but for some reason, all versions of the Ironwood Club I can find don't have this buff, so I don't know where the wiki is getting that from, so I've just gone with the Club of Hill Giant Strength instead, but if I'm wrong, maybe you want to switch it to this. I've also gone with the Ironfire Shield, that when we use Shillelagh, it adds a retaliation effect, allowing making our attackers take a little bit of piercing damage when they attack us. It's just there for the AC, but this is a nice little thematic buff. But the big ticket item here is the Darkfire Shortbow, giving us resistance to fire and cold damage, and the ability to cast haste once per long rest. With this, we can cast haste and then wild shape, meaning that overall we're going to have a ton of extra buffs. A buff to our unarmed strikes with Tavern Brawler and Enlarge. And then haste is going to allow us to attack up to 6 times per turn, which is insane. You will be doing incredible damage with this build. And I do believe that is everything. So yeah, that is the equipment. Let's not aggro the Owlbear Mother. With all of this together, like I said, you're going to have a really, really powerful build. And it's really fun because, again, just being able to turn into this absolutely huge wild-shaped creature is super, super fun. You're going to be seeing the combat footage right now, which is going to be showing off exactly how powerful this build is, and it absolutely shreds. Now, I'm just going to leave you with the combat footage because my voice is starting to go again, and I've got to live stream in less than an hour as of the time of this recording, so I don't want my voice to be completely gone. So I'm going to cut it off here. I'll leave you with the combat footage for now, but thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.
Don't waste a step. Come a little closer.